My name is Jordan Reynolds, and today I'm going to talk about the design process of David Adjaye, a British architect. His work combines technical innovation in the use of materials, for instance, with an awareness of the formal possibilities demonstrated by the history of modern architecture and the history of architecture in general. To determine what David's process was, I wanted to begin with a pursuit of his lines of possible lineage and inspiration. Looking back, David comes from two different lines of architects, such as Cheikh Chasset and Eduardo Souto de Moura. Eduardo and David both are inspired by Mies van der Rohe, and it is present in both of their work. To me, David is a descendant of Mies in the way he designs and uses materiality to create narratives in the designs. Adjaye defines his approach to design as moving from the inside out. These buildings are said to unfold cinematically. His starting point is to gain an understanding of a client's needs and the way in which the sequence of spaces is used. He then begins his design process. It all begins with cultural inspiration and context, as well as a strong study of the area in which he is building. He studies the people and the way they use the space around him. Maybe something has happened in the area. How do the people react? Maybe the area is currently developing, so what do the people need? From looking at his sketches and drawings, it seems as though he starts with a basic geometrical shape, always some sort of square or rectangle, and he lets the narrative of the site and people in the area tell him how to allocate spatial organization in the design. The shape of the building is molded by the characteristics of the site to ensure the best lighting and organization. Like Mies, he finds his designs to be complete with detail. Again, studying the area, he finds a way to use materiality, light, and orientation to then help him carefully detail the design to tell the story of the community surrounding it. But is this the true story of his design process? What really drives his design? I'm going to study two of his famous buildings to see if his design process he claims is the one he stays true to. This is Ruby City, a building designed from an initial sketch by a woman named Linda Pace who died from breast cancer. She had a vision for what Ruby City would be and left it to Adjaye to interpret. This building to me is a great representation for his use of site and cultural analysis, and also his use of geometrical shapes. He created this building by studying the land and people of San Antonio, Texas. Its gestures are ample, purposeful moves intended to tune visitors in to a deeper sensitivity to light, to seeing, and to the wonder of the creative process. The roof line is angular and articulated, and large showpiece windows are visible from any vantage point. Upward movement of the cantilevers help direct the imagination to the sky and to sunlight, which will be the preoccupation of the building's interior. So with all of that being said, the design looks as though it began as a basic rectangular shape and had edges chipped off in strategic places to create spaces and experiences that he wanted to see. With Pace's drawing as a guide, he made study of San Antonio's architectural heritage through native, colonial, and early American phases, with special attention to the city's connection to water sources and its mission history. The building is conceived to be experienced as an ambulatory loop, from the ground up through the independent gallery rooms and back down, returning to the lobby and plaza. The exterior form consists of a heavier top with sloping soffits, emphasizing its upward lift, topped with two crowning lanterns that create an animated roofline. The lanterns in turn bring natural light into the gallery spaces when desired, and coupled with the two lenses facing Chris Park and San Pedro Creek, respectively, reintroduce views back to the exterior and San Antonio at large. Adjaye has also carved out a moment for visitors to be misdirected into a small room with a big window, honoring the city and his patron after ascending the staircase into the main part of the building, before entering the three big gallery spaces. His precise use of light in Ruby City is also meant to echo the way light travels through the colonnades, also chipping away at the block that exists. The circuitous path he is designed for visitors to travel through the space is meant to reenact the meditative strolls that earlier generations of San Antonians might have taken around their religious structures. The color of the building was chosen because he was interested in understanding earthbound architecture of the pre-colonial history. There are three large rooms that museum visitors will encounter. One has a pitched roof that doesn't quite meet at the top. A row of vertical windows admits light through the space between the two non-intersecting slopes. This room is meant to give one an experience of a converted shed or barn artist studio. The next has big walls that feel much closer together, and one very high window. This evokes an industrial space subdivided for art making. Adjaye describes the final room as an art cube. As a place for displaying art, it is the only principal room at Ruby City that does not emit zenithal light through the ceiling, or otherwise known as controlled lighting. In all, this design is a great representation of the use of a deep site analysis and cultural and artistic inspiration to determine the design from a basic geometric form. He uses these steps to create a new experience for those who visit. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture is one of the best examples of David's design process, as it is seen all the way throughout the building. The exterior consists of three-tier facade of bronze canted panels, which become a sort of inverted triple pyramid. It draws on the shape of a traditional West African column with a corona at the top. When designing the building, he kept in mind that he wanted the building's exterior to tell the overall narrative that he was trying to portray. When it comes to the detail of the building, his use of aluminum was actually strategic. He originally wanted to use bronze for the facade, but the weight of bronze is onerous, so the use of recycled aluminum allowed them to still give the facade a bronze alloy finish, but also use a material that's sustainable. The pattern work on the paneled facade is made from handmade metalsmithing patterns designed by freed slaves in Charleston, South Carolina, and New Orleans, Louisiana. With the facade, it makes the building seem as though it changes in shifting light. To David, it seemed like a way to start to tell the story that moves from one continent where people were taken, along with their cultures, and used as labor, then contributed towards making another country and new cultures. That history then continues in the decorative patterning of those panels. The overall structure of the building was created to be stacked boxes with flexible volumes that provide maximum views. To do this, he orchestrated views through the facade with cutouts and through windows in the galleries onto the National Mall. You can see the White House, the Capitol, monuments, and memorials from each of the cardinal directions. This allows the history to play right in front of the viewer's eyes. The design of the building is separated into three parts. There are the historical galleries, which create an underground crypt experience. Then the second part deals with migration from the South to urban centers and the beginning of the new professional classes. He wanted the journey from that crypt up into the corona to be analogous to history as a kind of migratory process toward the light. So the flow of traffic in the building is geared toward upward movement. At the top is what is considered the now. It's about the arts. So this structure relates to Corona's three tiers. It is meant to suggest the link between symbolic form and the museum's content. He describes the ground floor as basically a transparent container, a sort of Messian glass box, open all around and letting light in. Outside the entrance facing the mall, there's a water feature, which you cross, making a kind of symbolic passage to a porch beneath the bronze facade, which alludes to the Southern tradition of porches. When it comes to the cultural aspect of the project, David describes it best by saying, the mall is set up for the people of the country to understand the fundamental nature of the country. There's already a museum that talks about space and exploration. Another museum talks about natural history. Another about the founding of the nation. Another showing portraits of the people. It became very clear at the end of the 20th century that there were still missing chapters about people displaced by early settlers whose land was taken from them, and about people brought here as slaves. Their stories are fundamental to the DNA of this country. Creating museums for their stories is not about serving special interests. It's about celebrating the true diversity of the country, showing how people, even people who moved here under the most traumatic conditions, ultimately thrived. So to conclude, David Adjaye is an experienced artist. He wants to tell a narrative of a design through the experience one has with or in it. He believes in studying simplistic forms to fulfill their potential of creating a new experience for those who encounter it. He has no one process for design because he is driven by inspiration from people, culture, and his own background. The only common ground I can find in majority of his projects are beginning with basic geometric form and allowing the study of the site to determine how the shape will be morphed. The morph of the shape is geared toward creating new experiences and creating a narrative that has never been told before. He strives for approaching design from a different point of view with every project he takes on. Cultural experience is what drives his overall design process. Thank you.